Well, welcome back to the second video in our Seder mini-series. I hope that you're enjoying the learning so far. When we left off, we had just finished learning about the parsley and its meaning. Now, I want to talk to you about something very significant, the breaking of the middle matzah. Now, I'm going to take some of the matzah. Now, you'll see here that I have a special linen bag that is used in Seders, and we're going to look at the matzah together. Now, in this bag there are 3 compartments, and we actually are going to take the matzah from the middle. In each of the compartments, of course, there's a piece of matzah wrapped in linen, but I'm going to take the matzah from the middle here, and there's a significance to this, which we're going to talk about. And so I have my piece of matzah here. And I want to explain to you the mystery of the 3 matzahs, okay? For at least 1,000 years before Yeshua was born, the sages, the ancient sages, instructed us to take 3 matzahs and wrap them in a linen bag. Rabbis have argued through the ages over the significance of the 3. Some have said that they represent the 3 patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Others have argued that they are representative of Elijah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel. But in light of the new covenant, we know the truth. They are a perfect symbol of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit. Now, in this part of the Pesach Seder, we remove the middle matzah, as I have already done, and we break it. Okay, so I'm going to break the matzah into 2 pieces. And once again, this ritual is a mystery to the ancient sages, but now we can see that this is a symbol of the Son who was broken for us. Remember, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The Son is in the middle matzah. We can see it as the Son who is broken for us. Furthermore, the middle matzah is then wrapped back up in the linen. So I'm going to wrap it back up in the linen here. This is the 2 broken pieces of matzah. And then it is hidden as a symbol of the death and the burial of Messiah, Yeshua. And what we use to hide this is something called the stone, this pillow. And I have one here. I'll just show it to you. This is used in Seders around the world. And I'm going to take and what we try to do is very slyly hide the broken matzah under the pillow, okay? And later on, this is going to come into play. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the bread of affliction, the bread of affliction. And so we take the rest of the matzah and lift it up, and as the leader, I would say, this is the bread of affliction that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry enter and eat thereof, and all who are in distress come and celebrate this Passover. At present, we celebrate it here, but next year we hope to celebrate it in the land of Israel. I want to just take one of these other pieces of matzah here and do a little bit of explanation about the significance of the matzah. Remember, I said that since before the days of Messiah, our sages have commanded the manner in which the matzah is created. They tell us that it must be made without leaven, and so it must be flat. And you can see this is extremely flat. Also, it must be burnt with stripes. And you will see here that there are stripes on the matzah. I'll hold it a little closer. It must be burnt with stripes and pierced with holes. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but there are little pinholes all through the matzah, the way that it is prepared. Now, look at it for a moment and notice these 3 things about the matzah. First of all, there are burn marks throughout the bread. And what they have called these burn marks for many hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of years, they have come to call the burn marks bruises. Okay? Now notice that the bruises are in rows. You can see there, rows up and down, or rows horizontally. They're in rows. And they make essentially stripes in the matzah. And then, of course, we note those pinholes, that the matzah is pierced for baking. And that is so that the air can come up through when they're baking it. It is pierced for even baking as unleavened bread. So 3 things. We have the burn marks, or the bruises. We have the stripes. And we have the piercings, or the pinholes. Now, does that maybe sound a little bit familiar to you? I think it kind of does. Think about Isaiah chapter 53 and verse 5, which says, he was wounded or pierced for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. I ask you, could there be a more perfect illustration of Messiah? Jesus is the middle matzah. And he said, I am the bread of life. I am the bread of life. And so, all together, let's say this. We thank you, O God, for your goodness shown to our forefathers and to us. May we learn to show goodness to one another. And as we lift up these pieces of unleavened bread, we see the symbol of 3 becoming one in unity. We see that the Lord our God is one, as the prophet Zechariah has said. And now all together, the Lord will be king over the whole earth. On that day there will be one Lord, and his name the only name. Amen. Amen. So that's the matzah and some of the significance of the matzah. And I'm just going to set a little bit more over here. Now we're coming to the second cup of the Seder, the second cup, and that is the cup of instruction. And so we're going to fill the cup of instruction together. And I still have a little bit of juice, but we would take, and at this point we would also fill the cup. And you can do that where you are. And then we come to this cup of instruction where we will tell the ancient story of how the Lord delivered his people from bondage and slavery. Now, we have filled the cup. I don't want you to drink it just yet. We're going to come back to this much later in our Seder together. But we have the cup of instruction filled. I'm going to set it right over here, and you can hold that until we get there. But this is the point in the Seder where we would have different people come and do some readings. Now, I'm the only one here, so I'm going to read these for you. You can feel free to read along. But we are going to recount together the story. And so, reader number 1 says this: You will remember the story of Joseph, who was sold by his brothers and went into Egypt as a slave. How the Lord was with him and prospered everything he did. You remember how he was able to save his father Jacob, called Israel, and all his family from a famine in the land God had promised. However, many years later, a new king arose who knew nothing of Joseph, and he feared the Hebrews because they had become strong and numerous. What if they join with our enemies and turn against us? Pharaoh decided to impose harsh and bitter slavery upon the Israelites, but still, God blessed his people in strength and number. Then a second reader would come and read the following. Pharaoh grew more afraid and ordered every baby boy among the Israelites to be drowned in the Nile River. One Israelite couple hid their little boy for 3 months, and when he could no longer be hidden, they made a waterproof basket for him and set him adrift on the river, entrusting him to God's care. His sister Miriam watched as he floated downstream. Pharaoh's daughter found the child in his basket, took pity on him, and chose to raise him as her own son. She called him Moses, meaning drawn from the water. The story continues. Reader number 3. Moses grew and saw the story continues. Moses grew and saw of the suffering of his people. One day he was overcome with rage and killed an Egyptian. The story continues. Reader number 3 would say, Moses grew and saw of the suffering of his people. One day he was overcome with rage and killed an Egyptian slave master who was beating a Hebrew. He buried the body, but when he realized the story was known, he fled from the palace and from Pharaoh. And Moses became a shepherd in the land of Midian, far from the cries of his suffering people. And then the last reading, the Lord, however, saw the suffering of the children of Israel. He determined to raise up a deliverer to lead them out of bondage. After Moses had been a shepherd for 40 years, God appeared to him in a bush that burned but was not consumed. Moses drew close and listened as God commissioned him to go to Pharaoh. Moses was fearful and reluctant, but eventually agreed to bring God's message to the king of Egypt. Let my people go. Moses left the wilderness to go back to Egypt, to Pharaoh's palace where he had been raised, and he took the message which the Lord had given him. But God himself warned Moses of the resistance that he would encounter. And so altogether, I want us to read this next text. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. Exodus 3:19 and 20. God sent plagues, each worse than the previous one. Yet with each plague, Pharaoh hardened his heart. The Egyptians were afflicted with discomfort and disease, bane and blight. Still, Pharaoh would not relent. With the 10th and most awful plague, God pierced through the hardness of Pharaoh's heart. And so altogether, on that same night, I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both men and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. Exodus 12 and verse 12. Now, at this point in the traditional Seder, the entire Exodus story is retold. Usually, in a live environment, we summarize this for the sake of time, but I think a great way for us to do this would be for you to pause the video here and to go and read the story aloud with your family or with the group that you are with. And it's found in Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 30. But please come back. We have one more thing to cover before this segment is finished. And if you can grab an empty plate, you can use a paper one or a real one, doesn't matter, but you're going to want it for this next part. We'll see you soon. All right, you've read the story together, and now we're going to move on to talk about the 10 plagues. And this is a piece where you can participate, and what we're going to have you do is take the cup of instruction. Remember, we have it already here. We've poured it, but we've not partaken of it yet. And you're going to take, and every time that I speak the name of one of the plagues, you're going to just dip your finger in the juice and then take and put a little dot on your plate, like so. I don't know if you can see that. And when we're finished, we should have 10 dots, okay? So here we go. As I say the name of each of the plagues, this is what we're going to do, okay? Are you ready? All right. Here are the 10 plagues, and I'm going to say one, and you'll repeat it, okay? And so on. So, blood, you say blood. Frogs, vermin, flies, pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and finally, the slaying of the firstborn. And now you'll have your plate with all of your dots on it, and that's just kind of a fun way to remember all of the different plagues. Well, again, we're putting the cup of instruction aside. We're actually not going to partake of it during this video. Thank you for joining me for this second segment of our Seder video mini-series. Today we covered the incredible significance of the matzah and how that this part of the ceremony points so clearly to the Messiah, Yeshua. We also filled the cup of instruction and covered the telling of the Exodus story, including the plagues. Join me next time as I speak about the 4 questions, something called Dayenu, and then give an explanation of the various elements and symbols found on the Seder plate. In our next segment, we will partake of that cup of instruction that we've filled in this segment, and we're also going to partake of the elements on the Seder plate and learn of their meaning. See you next time.